I'm Doug Fee. Welcome to another edition of Dish It Out here at Mercer County Community College at our Culinary Center, where we offer both credit and non-credit classes. And my special guest today is Wendy Jager. Wendy,
hi,
welcome.
Doug. Thank you.
And Wendy, you specialize in Mediterranean cuisine specifically?
Provençal cuisine.
Okay, and
Southern
what is that?
French.
Okay.
Primarily the southern region of France and northern region of Italy along the coast.
And you get to spend, when you're not here, you spend a lot of time there?
I do. I have a business called Bliss Travels, and I design culinary vacations and culinary educational travel, primarily in the south of France, although I'm looking at expanding to Burgundy.
Excellent.
And I do some trips to Paris as well.
Excellent. And sometimes if you have a spot to fill, you know who to call, right?
Absolutely.
All right. I like those pro bono things. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what do we have today?
Well, today we're going to make something I actually had in France this summer with a well-known chef in the region, Rennes Samu, and it is zucchini ribbons al pesto. And the zucchini is treated like pasta, and it holds up very nicely, and it tastes quite a lot like pasta. And we're going to make that with chilled tomato soup and a goat cheese garnish, which is also very southern French. And in this case, we're also going to grill lamb loin chops. But this dish, this combination of flavors could be served with anything: grilled fish, chicken. The star here is really the vegetables, and that's true in southern France, as you know.
Good. So someone like my wife who doesn't like lamb can say, no, I can do it, just change it out, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
And
we're fired up and ready
yep,
to rock.
and so we're just going to use a grill pan, and this has been marinated in a coarse sea salt, this lamb chop, and herbes de Provence. And we're going to stick it on a hot grill, and we're going to cook it for 3 to 4 minutes, and it's going to depend on the thickness of the meat. We're not going to move it because we're going to get grill marks on it, and we're going to flip it over, and then if it's very thick, I like to also cook it on its side, which I'm just like this for a bit to brown that. We're going to take this and put this on the back burner and let this finish.
Finish that off in the back?
Yeah. While that's happening, we're going to make our tomato soup. And this is about the easiest thing you can make. We're going to put a pot on, which we put some olive oil in, and we're going to quarter tomatoes.
And what kind of tomatoes we have here?
These happen to be tomatoes off the vine. Any tomato that you get, very red, very juicy, very ripe, more sugar in it is going to produce a better flavored soup.
So in technical terms, we want the pretty ones, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you can get these fabulous heirloom tomatoes now. They're calling ugly tomatoes.
Well, see, to a chef, that is pretty.
Yes, that's true. And all we're going to do is take them and put them in the pan with a little bit of oil, roasted clove of garlic, and a little bit of sugar. And the amount of sugar is really going to depend on how ripe and how juicy your tomatoes are. And in this case, we put several in the pan already. And I don't know if you can see this, but in this case, they've been cooking about 15 minutes, which is what you're going to want, till they're softened and they get sort of a deep, deep red look to them. And then all we do is we add some water to it.
Now, you didn't seed these tomatoes. Is that the traditional style?
You know, I've done tomato soup and gazpacho a variety of ways, and this is actually based on a southern French recipe that Patricia Wells wrote. And I don't think you can do much better than her.
No.
So, no, she does not seed them. And what we do in this case is we cook the tomatoes for another about 20 minutes, although the timing of this is not particularly precise. And then we stick my favorite kitchen gadget in, which is an immersion blender. And when they're soft, they'll blend very easily. We do have 1 raw tomato in here, so that might make a bit of a mess. And we're going to blend this soup completely.
Well, you're wearing a red apron. Is there something that I should have known before I watched you do this?
I am so sorry I didn't mention that. And we're just going to blend this and let it cook. And I so recommend doing this a day before, because the flavors meld and the soup becomes so much nicer when you do that.
Let me set this on the simmer.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's it. Our soup is just going to cook for a bit, and we'll go to the zucchini ribbons. There are a couple ways to do this. You can use a lovely mandolin, or you can use a really inexpensive slicer. I don't know about you, but I don't adore high-end kitchen products. I think you can make almost the same thing with Lassin in the south of France. That's what we end up with. We don't have huge professional kitchens like this to work with.
I've seen some mandolins that are actually scary.
Yes. But in this case, this can be done probably more than 2 ways, but I'm going to show you 2 ways today. We just take a whole zucchini and we'll trim it. We're going to take the slicer, which is set on the thinnest setting, and I'm just going to move this over a bit so my hand doesn't hit it. And we're going to slice along several slices. And then we're just going to pull the slices out, stack them, and then we can use our knife to cut the zucchini to the thickness that we want, the width that we want. So you might want to go and have a dish that's fettuccine width. You might want to go for something that's more like linguine. And you're just going to cut along. This is raw zucchini, by the way. It does not need to be cooked. If when you put your pesto on, you want a softer product, put your pesto on an hour or 2 in advance. And all that happens when you're done is you end up with these very, very thin ribbons, like so. And it's nice if you can get the green edge around it. I think it makes it prettier. So
now, how far in advance do you do this?
You can do it in the morning for that evening. And in fact, you can do it the day before if you don't put any sauce on and keep it refrigerated. The other way to do it is to cut the zucchini into pieces. You want to stay away from the seeds and the core because that doesn't hold up.
Right.
There's no flavor reason for it, but and then you can just slide the pieces along the same kind of slicer, and you don't have to use your knife afterwards. There's really no secret to it, and if you can come up with a better way of doing it, that's fine. And we have a bowl that we've already prepared, full of these little ribbons, and all we're going to do is make a pesto. Which is basil, Parmesan, a little bit of lemon, some garlic, olive oil, and some salt. So we're going to take a clove of garlic, and we're going to use the flat edge of our knife.
A lot of people tend to get lazy. They chop garlic in a jar, and there's no substitute for the real thing.
No, I don't think there is either. One thing I really like to do with garlic is I like to roast it and use roasted garlic for almost every recipe that calls for raw garlic. It gives it such a warm and sweeter flavor, I think, than the raw garlic. So we're just going to stick a clove, that was a large clove, so the equivalent of 2 cloves in. We're going to take several ounces of cheese, Parmesan, in this case, put that in. I like to put a little lemon in. And then we're just going to, I'm going to take the top off and put the basil leaves in. We should have several ounces of that.
Now, do you ever make your pesto well ahead of time and then freeze it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
You want to get the basil while your garden's ready and there's plenty of it around?
Yep, and you can freeze it in little ice cube trays and then have individual servings to use for a soup au pistou, for example, or a regular pasta dish. And we're just going to grind this up and add oil till we get the desired thickness. You don't want to do this too long because you don't want to warm the basil too much and cook it too much. And I think for our purposes that's pretty good, and we'll just add a little salt to it.
And what kind of salt do we have here?
I really love coarse sea salt in almost every recipe because I like to get that crunch of salt separate from the flavor. It's different when you bake, but...
Right. Not only does it add more texture, but it adds some different flavors from the minerals from whatever water that sea salt came from. Okay.
And now we're going to take this off, and we're going to toss the pesto with our pasta. You can make this pesto thicker if you prefer. I think with the vegetables as opposed to the pasta, it's kind of nice to have this a little bit thinner of a sauce. And all we're going to do is toss this up. Additionally, I'm going to blend the tomato soup a bit more. I know it was fighting back because it was hot.
Now, the style of cooking that you do seems much more laid back. A lot of people get too technical when they worry about cooking food. They're almost afraid to do things.
I agree with you. It's interesting. If you go to a restaurant, everybody's a restaurant critic and can tell you exactly what's wrong with their dish. But when people get in their own kitchens, they can't seem to trust themselves. And I talk to so many people when I teach classes who say, was that 2 tablespoons or 1.5 teaspoons, or how much did you put in there exactly? And what I would like, at least when I teach classes, what I would like people to see is that It really depends on what their tastes are. Use your own senses. Look at it. Does it look pretty? Does it look like there's too much sauce, too little sauce? Taste it. Add. Yeah, if something doesn't sound right in a recipe to you, don't put it in. Put in something that sounds better to you.
Exactly. And if that philosophy sounds good to you, you can actually take one of Wendy's classes here at the Culinary Center at Mercer County Community College.
I'm just going to grab the tomato.
And this really does look like pasta. I mean, I'm just thinking of some kids I know. I can set this in front of them, tell them we have pasta, and then afterwards tell them, oh, by the way, that was zucchini.
That was not, yeah. You have to give your kids credit. Perhaps they will try more than you think they will. Okay, and we're done with our soup, and we're going to get our lamb.
Okay.
The lamb, I say cook 3 to 4 minutes on one side before turning it. You can always cook it additionally, but you don't want to move it when you first cook it because you want to have those nice grill marks on it. So we're going to put zucchini on our plate. And you can serve this, I'm going to plate this 2 different ways because this is also a great summertime vegetarian dish, or can be served family style. We're going to garnish it with some pine nuts, which if you prefer the flavor, you can toast.
Which a lot of people just often throw way too much into the pesto, and if you're not a big fan of them,
or if you have people with nut allergies, you can still make this dish and not have an issue. And then I just took little grape tomatoes. If you can find the yellow ones as well, that's very nice because you get a lot of color contrast. And just cut them into 6 or 8 wedges depending on the size of the tomato. And we'll place these around as a garnish. And we'll take a couple of small basil leaves.
A lot of people get careless when it comes to garnish, and it's so nice to see people garnish with things that are actually in the dish.
Yeah, but people don't think of garnish as adding to the flavor, or even, in fact, advertising what the product is that you're going to be putting into your mouth, right? And then we're just going to do our tomato soup. We'll ladle that out. This plate that I'm ladling the soup onto would be a great dinner plate. And I really envision a plate that just has the pesto on it as either a family-style side dish that comes into the center of the table, or as something you would have just as a light lunch with maybe some bread on the side. And then we're going to take our lamb chops, and we're going to put those on the plate. And we have some goat cheese to put on top of our tomato soup, which in this case is still warm. I personally prefer this soup cold.
Again, something easier if you make it the day ahead. Make it easier when you have guests or company.
Absolutely, and it keeps for a week. It's tomato, so. And then we have our dish.
That is beautiful.
Well, thank you, and hopefully delicious.
We'll find that out soon enough. If you're interested in learning more about something like this, you can visit us online at www.mccc.edu/HRIM and click on our What's Happening tab to learn about our classes and learn more about what's going on here both on the credit and non-credit side. So, Wendy, thank you very much, Chef. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me. And I look forward to teaching one of these in our carry-out cooking classes.
You may have some requests for this, so come take Wendy's class here at the Culinary Center at Mercer County Community College. You will not be sorry.
You're unique. So are we at Mercer County Community College. Over 60 majors to choose from. Discover your unique path and turn your passion into a career. Follow your unique path here at Mercer County Community College.
I'm starving. What's for breakfast?
Guten Tag!
Johannes, Franz!
I bring you arts-enriched Raisinblams, fortified with increased test scores and creative problem-solving skills.
It's good!
And good for you. Bobby? Susie? Don't worry, that's just the power of the arts!
Feed your kids the arts. For 10 simple ways to learn how, visit AmericansForTheArts.org.
Welcome to another segment of Dish It Out. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the one and only Chef Doug Fee.
Oh, you're much too kind. It's good to be back here playing again in our kitchen here at the Culinary Center at Mercer County College. And we're going to make some fun things tonight.
Sounds good. I see that you're looking quite spicy here, Doug, tonight.
Exactly, although I'm not a real spicy kind of guy. I'm a more sensitive tastes. I don't like the heat when I eat, but nevertheless, we're going to do blackened swordfish tonight. And people get afraid of things that are blackened because they're too hot and spicy, and I'm going to show you how you can tone it down.
Wonderful. Some people out there may want something a little milder, and I guess you're going to show us how to do that.
Exactly. And we're going to start here with the heat first. We have some red pepper, some white pepper, and some black pepper. Now, people ask, why don't you just throw in a whole bunch of red cayenne pepper or a whole bunch of white pepper or black pepper? You have different types of heat. So what we want to do is we want to have different layers of heat there. So it's not just, here's some heat. It's more subtle to those who have who like that heat. So we'll start there. Now we're going to add some flavor to it. And we have some granulated garlic and granulated onions. And of each of the heat, I had 2 teaspoons of the peppers. And now we're adding 2 tablespoons of each of these. I have paprika. This is smoked paprika. A little extra flavor in there. And 1 tablespoon of salt. A lot of recipes would probably use 2 tablespoons of salt here, but I figure I can always add salt later, especially if I'm going with a fish that might be a little on the salty side.
And this looks like something when you're doing a rub like this, I guess you can do this far in advance if you'd like.
Absolutely. What I typically do is I'll make up a batch of this, and I'll hold it in my pantry, put it in a Ziploc bag. But you don't want to hold it for more than a couple weeks, maybe 2 months. It starts to lose its heat, and any dry spices you have around more than 6 months are starting to lose their effectiveness in their flavor. So we're going to add here, we have a little thyme and a little basil. And these are dried spices, by the way. And we have a little dried parsley and 2 tablespoons of each of those. And we have here some tarragon. I like some tarragon, so it's not quite, tones it down just a little bit more, has a little bit of sweetness to it. Now, for our first one here, I'm going to make one for you, Frank.
Oh, you're too kind.
And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just mix it so we bring most of the pepper to the top here. All right. And I don't want to waste all this. If I put my fish right in here, then what I don't use I have to throw out because we got fish juice in there, which we don't need.
And we do pay attention to sanitary procedures here at Mercer.
Absolutely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dip it. And a lot of times when people are breading things, how do I not end up with oven mitts, breadcrumb oven mitts or spice oven mitts? I like to use tongs. Another way you can tone this down is only put it on one side instead of both sides like we're doing here. We're going to get our plate nice and hot. And we have here a iron pan here. If you had a cast iron skillet at home, that would be ideal. But this is nice so that you'll be able to see it. And what we want to do is let this heat up, and we see some smoke coming off the top. We know we're good and hot here. Put it on, we should hear some sizzling. All right. Now for me, I'm going to want to tone mine down. So I want those dried spices mixed in really well, so mine won't be quite as spicy.
Could you possibly use some fresh herbs as opposed to dried?
You could, but the fresh herbs tend to work a little better because if we introduce moisture to our oil, you're going to get a little more snap, crackle, and pop, and maybe wearing some of that hot oil.
Yes, you'd like to sit down at the dinner table, not the emergency room.
Exactly. All right. And we'll sit this on here as well. And we're going to let them just blacken, and it's going to do a couple of things. We're going to get flavors out of this that you can't get any other way. The flavors that are in this swordfish that we're drawing out of there, because we're going to blacken it, we're going to brown it. We're creating a caramelization there that creates flavors that otherwise our tongues can't detect.
So in actuality, the term blackened is coming more from not the spiciness, but more the caramelization.
Exactly. And it adds a nice texture to the outside of our fish as well. It's over.
Well, unfortunately, I don't think the smell-o-vision's been installed yet in the homes in Mercer County because so far this is smelling wonderful.
Okay. So now you can see I got the colors that I want here. So what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to pop this in the oven and let it finish right off in the oven. So if you would open the oven there for me, Frank.
Certainly.
Okay. Now if you're working at home and you have a large batch that you want to do, you can do a whole bunch of them and put them on sheet pan. So if you have a party for 15 even, just do a bunch up, leave them off to the side, and then before you need them, pop them in a hot oven and make sure your fish is cooked through. And of course, we're going to tell our fish is done because it gets flaky, it changes color. And we want to make sure that we don't undercook what we're serving our guests. To accompany this meal, I'm going to put together some couscous. And as a chef, and one of the things we teach here in our credit side with our hospitality programs is not only do you have to have the culinary skills, you have to have the business sense to get ahead. It's not enough to just know how to cook. So what we're going to do here is show some of our ways to utilize some leftovers. I don't like to say chefs are cheap, but good chefs are cheap in that they know how to utilize things. There's no waste. So we had some leftover roasted vegetables hanging out here in the kitchen. So what I did is I diced them up, and I'm going to use that in my couscous. So we're going to heat up our pan and dump in these vegetables. They're already cooked. All right, we're just going to stir these guys up. And to this, for our couscous, I'm going to add a little bit of salt in here. If our vegetables are already salted, we want to be careful. We don't want to get too carried away on that. A little pinch of salt in there. So now I have in here 1 cup of stock. I think that pan's hot.
That pan sounds very hot. Any particular stock that you'd recommend as far as flavoring, chicken stock versus vegetable? Or?
Chicken is nice flavor, but for the fish, I happen to find some vegetable stock in our pantry here, so that's what I'm using. And a lot of times for couscous, it's equal amounts, 1 cup of couscous to 1 cup of stock. And a lot of times you can add olive oil, which we did to our pan to saute off our vegetables a little more, just to warm them up a bit. We stir that in. It was already up to a boil, because we had our stock already hot. Lid on for 5 minutes, and that's going to be done.
So that's even easier than one of those instant stuffing mixes you could buy at the supermarket. Probably a whole lot better for you, right?
Doesn't have to be difficult to be good.
Very true.
Now we're going to move down here. We're going to put together a pineapple salsa to go with our fish on the side here. We have some fresh pineapple here. This is 1 pineapple all diced up. And to that we're going to add, this is about 3 tomatoes, plum tomatoes. You like more tomatoes? Put more in. Some green onions, some scallions. And how much you put in depends on how much you like it. All right? Hot peppers. Peanut peppers.
A must-have.
For you. I'm not going to add these yet because I'm sensitive. I have a sensitive taste, right?
I almost forgot. I apologize.
So now we're going to add in some chopped parsley and a little bit of garlic. And salsa, this is great if you can make it up ahead of time. And then some red onions. Again, just some color. We want it to look pretty. So I don't have to go on all of those, but we'll put some in there.
That's the beauty with the dishes you're making today, because as you're saying, you could substitute. If you wanted, instead of pineapple, you could do, say, a mango or something of that nature.
And any fruit that's great for salsa is you got something that you need to utilize before it goes bad. Works terrific. But of course, your dish will only be as good as your weakest ingredient. So if you have something that's really going bad, don't use it. We're not that cheap.
And how far in advance would you say to make this? Because it's nice to have those flavors start to meld together. So this you'd like to do in advance typically, correct?
The salsa, definitely at least a day in advance would be ideal. All right. 2 days, 3 days. Now, if you're in a rush, you can cheat and you can use canned products. I mean, there's nothing better than fresh. But if you raid your pantry and you have some salsa hanging out in your fridge, and then you find some mango or pineapple to add to it, by all means. In that way, I do encourage cheating. Not on the credit side here when we're teaching, but from a culinary perspective, you know, there's only so many hours in a day. You need to get things done. That works.
Absolutely.
So now, in just a short amount of time, we have our salsa ready. Our couscous should be just about done. Our fish should be ready to come out. Now we can assemble everything. So you can see there's a real quick and easy meal to come home when you're on the fly and throw together within a half hour.
Fantastic.
All right, so let's get our fish out and plate up.
Explore new worlds. Read. Visit literacy.gov and let the journey begin.
So Chef Fee, now that you showed us how to make this wonderful dish, why don't you show us the proper way to plate it up for presentation?
Okay. I wouldn't do this at home. My family's too hungry. But if we want to make it look nice and quiet everybody down, we feed them right away. But we can make it look pretty here. We're going to take our couscous, and I just have a little ramekin here. And I'm going to use that to mold my couscous. And it's pasta, so we have starch in there. Right? And all we have to do is press it on down and do that over our pot so we don't get couscous all over the place. Now we're going to set this down right on our plate. Oh, we made a little mess.
Well, that's okay.
It's okay. Once we have a spatula, we'll just push it all together.
So we could do this with any rice or potato or anything with starch?
Exactly. A pilaf works real well for that. I'll take my official hospitality club towel here and just clean up a little bit.
I don't think we've done much mention of the program so far this episode. That's unlike us.
We're slipping. Okay, next we have our fish here. It's blackened. And this one's yours, the nice spicy one. All right.
Bring it to me.
Set that on here.
I thought both of them go on the plate.
No, that one would be mine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let's not get greedy. All right, we're going to put a nice garnish on here. A lot of people like lemon with their fish. So we're going to put some out there. Already squeezed. We don't want any pits in our lemon wedges there. So if we can find them without pits, so much the better. Garnish this up. Now, since this is your salsa, see I still have my jalapenos off to the side here. I'll take my salsa, plate this up. I got a nice pretty glass here, and for you, a special jalapeno garnish there.
Oh, thank you very much.
Just for you. Yeah, I'll take the mild.
Beautiful colors, too, with all the different components of your dish.
It's an easy dish you can put together in no time at all. For other helpful hints that you want to learn, come join us at the Culinary Center at Mercer County College. We can show you this and a whole lot more from a lot of different chefs that are very talented. So you should come and see us.
Thank you so much, Chef Fig. It's wonderful.
Always good to be here.
It's time to dig in.
We'll see you next time.
You're unique. So are we at Mercer County Community College. Over 60 majors to choose from. Discover your unique path and turn your passion into a career. Small classes and enthusiastic professors. Follow your unique path here at Mercer County Community College.
Welcome to another edition of Ask Frank, where we'll answer your questions and give you some culinary tips of the trade. Today's Ask Frank segment involves fresh corn. It's always nice during certain seasons where maybe something like strawberries or blueberries may be in season. And when you hit that peak season, you're also usually getting the sweetest and the best fruits and vegetables at usually the best prices. So it's very important to take good care of those when they're in season. And a good way, the best way, as a matter of fact, for taking care of your fresh produce and putting it in your freezer would be to use a vacuum sealer. So here I have a vacuum seal bag, and very simply, if you have one of these, you probably used it before. If not, I suggest you go out and get one as soon as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and place these 4 ears of corn that are picked at the height of the season, and I'm going to go ahead and put those in there so they're nice and even. And we have this bag, this particular bag we made based on the size of the corn. And we'll go ahead and put it in our sealer here. There we go. Okay, you see here now it's taking all the air out of the bag. And as soon as you have a nice tight seal, typically with most of these retail vacuum sealers you'll purchase in the store, as soon as it's done taking all the air out of the bag, it'll automatically seal for you. This particular one has an instant seal on it, so it's great. If I feel all the air is out, I can just hit the instant seal button, and it'll automatically put a seal on for me. And then what you have is a vacuum sealed bag of corn that you can go ahead and put in the freezer and have it maybe sometime in the winter with your holiday meal. So thanks for joining us for another edition of Ask Frank. Make sure to write your culinary questions to feed@mccc.edu. And remember, don't ask your neighbor, ask Frank.